right by that energy. Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Trendz, hosted by Inner Sanctum. I'm your host, PommyInOz, and we're back again looking at another issue in teams in the AFL. And this week we're looking at many people's surprise probably to be 0-2, and that is the Western Bulldogs. And let's take a look at their list profile from the start of the year and what's gone on. Their ladder position, obviously, last year, 8th. You could argue probably fortunate enough to get the 8th spot because of Carlton's inability to finish off close games. And it's kind of curtailed into this year, but I don't think enough people are talking about this isn't a regular occurrence. You look at their age profile and a lot is talked about Geelong, and we had the sayings last year, Dad's Army, they're too old, and they went out with experience and controlled games and ultimately became the premiers. They're the second oldest side in this league at the moment, and that is a big concern when you look and we get into it of how they structure up around the footy, and in particular without the football. They're the 5th most experienced side in the AFL comp, and like we said, this isn't a surprise if you've been watching along at home. Their last 5 ladder positions are 8th, 5th, 7th, 7th, and 13th. And it's a big question mark here of a lot of people talk about Port Adelaide, Ken Hinkley. A lot of people, put pressure on Carlton and Collingwood very early doors. We've already seen people start to put pressure on coaches who have been there 2 and 3 years. Stewie Dew is that exception, a bit longer, but there's pressure coming on him. Luke Beveridge kind of just goes along that gradient, but you look at Western Bulldogs' list covering the game for the last 5-6 years, that their list is incredible. Their list is incredible. They're always highly talked about. I would say 9 out of 10 pundits have the Western Bulldogs nearly year on year as the Smoky to win the flag. It's a big, little question mark about it. And the truth be told, the end product, aside from that 5th position, has always just been good enough, and they've never gone up that next level. And looking ahead, let's see why, particularly this year. You look at the stats so far, and obviously we have an incredibly small catchment. We have 2 games, but 14 from stoppage differential from points scored. And then you look at that midfield that they've been rolling with. Now, okay, I appreciate Adam Treloar has been out. He's got his hamstring issue, but Tom Liberatore, Jack McRae, and Mr. Marcus Bontempelli, you would be expecting with them 3, with Bailey Smith and co running through there, this should be a strength. This should be the archetypical boundaries and base of Doggy's game plan. And it simply hasn't yielded much results. And in fairness, against St Kilda, they were absolutely decimated at this point. St Kilda looked a class above. And going into the season, we are talking about 2 sides that were polar ends of expectation. We expected the Doggies to be fighting, going up a gear, and St Kilda to be at the bottom. And it's interesting enough that stoppage clearance and obviously centre clearance, which is 18th, these are 2 question marks that people have asked about Carlton pre-2022. Question marks asked about Collingwood moving into 2022. And these are real staples almost in good football management. And then you look at the inside 50s, generated 18th. They were very lackluster last week. The week prior, they were almost stagnant against Collingwood. And albeit both sides played well, you would expect the talent on this list to really usurp them figures. And we've seen it with other teams who have strong midfielders when they have issues with injury or late outs or suspensions. They still generate the scores. And this is where you ask the question. It's not personnel. It's something else, because the guys we've listed there are incredibly good. And let's look at Mr. Beveridge himself. He's been there a wee while now, and we can talk about it. But one thing that has been noticeable this year is a total disengagement of dare and endeavour. When you think of the Doggies and you go back to 2016, there was that famous quote, it's a 4-week plan when they made finals. They ended up winning it. It was encompassed of quick, play on footy, really bold and advantageous style of football. And we've seen a really almost like overzealous 2018 West Coast Eagles at the moment. Real slow, arborous, safe percentages, and albeit that is in game situations. But what's more alarming for me is this has been from opening bounce. They set up very heavy behind the ball. And it feels like Beveridge doesn't quite know his best 22, the best roles. It's almost like you'd give Kingsley at GWS the benefit of the doubt. New team, new list. He knows this list inside out. This is very much a fingerprint scan of Beveridge's footballing philosophy. And it feels like this year we've had a massive stray away from what we're noticing. We know that they're usually hard at the ball. They're very quick. They look to spread. They look to attack the corridor. They look to score in clusters. And it almost feels like now they've gone and resorted back to a different game plan. And when you've got the second oldest list, old habits die hard, as they say. And a big part of that you've got to look at is this man here, Sam Power, the list manager. He's been there a wee while. And when you look at what they're doing, they've lost a lot of players. Dunkley, do you know what I mean? Being a big out. Cordy, he is out and he's moved to St Kilda. They've incidentally faced him. And you look at the players that they've got out and then the players they've brought in, it doesn't quite structure up because it kind of looks, especially with their acquisitions at the forward half of Lob and players like that, but they were looking to go almost taller, which would then say a more slower game plan and a lack of width. And you look when you've got last year, you had Hunter playing up them wings. And we know he's so dynamic and so offensive. They haven't really replaced that. And at the moment, it feels like there's a lot of square pegs in round holes. Do you know what I mean? Norton, do you know what I mean? We know how talented he is. But if you can't get the ball into him, and when you've got that high forward line, which they are incredibly tall up there, they're not getting it in enough. And you've got to look at also the acquisitions from Sam. We know that Nick Austin was their recruiting manager. We've seen how dynamic Carlton are with their acquisitions. It doesn't feel like over the last 2-3 windows, with the exception maybe of Trelaw, that they've really addressed any need in this list. And losing the players that they did, okay, it may have been personal reasons. It may have been they're not best 22. But when you look at it, it's alarming. And we'll go on to some of the players they have got. And we've got him here, Liam Jones. The intercept game has almost died at the Doggies, and they've acquired, through fortune really with AFL legislation during the COVID time, a free agent really in Liam Jones, who on paper, when you look at their backline, it's always been a bit of a weak link. Alex Keefe hasn't quite set the world alight. They needed someone who's going to be tall, who can structure up on a tall guy and get that quick ball and get that transition game going. And Liam Jones has looked really out of place. Okay, he had the knock, but it looks like he's constantly being played in like kind of a cage. He's like an eagle in a cage. You see his instincts when he was at Carlton and he was playing well was to attack the ball and get the ball going very quickly. And we've seen over the first couple of games this year, definitely that has died. The ball movement, as we've said, incredibly slow and laboured, particularly in the back half of the ground. Way too many touches, constantly going for that exit kick down on the high half back or on the wing, and it's not really mirroring up. And it's like we go back to Beveridge. It's not playing your aces to their holes, is it, at all? You're looking at that, and then you look at the back line, and it feels like it really lacks a distinct bit of run. It lacks a bit of run and carry, a little bit of bold endeavour. And it's a shame because they've definitely got the personnel that can structure it, but it's not quite working. And then we go to the midfield, and we talked about the inside 50s. When you've got a forward line like they have, all these gentlemen are capable. And we're talking here, we're not talking about conjecturally, we're talking about fact. Jack McRae, Tom Liberatore are probably two of the best players in the league at what they do. You've seen the incredible acquisition of Tom Mitchell at Collingwood and what it does. Marcus Bontempelli, he's very direct. He's a superstar in every sense of the world. Bailey Smith, an incredible footballer. Again, a superstar. These aren't your run-of-the-mill players. These guys are built different. And the makeup of their midfield is incredibly talented. Liberatore doing the hard yakka, allowing these other players to be really gifted. Jack McRae gift feeding 40 touches sometimes to these players. And the fact that their inside 50 is so poor is a really concern. And it's a real lack of getting that territory. It's a real lack of getting that meters gained, which you could argue is offset by this part here. And that is the forwards, an incredibly tall forward line. And it's interesting because logically, if you look at sport worldwide, people are reinventing the wheel. And it feels like they've got an awful lot of tolls. And it doesn't make sense with their game plan. If you had a lot of tolls, you would be expecting this ball to be a death by 1,000 inside 50s. At the moment, they're still looking for that perfect entry inside 50. And you're playing Darcy, you're playing Norton there, Hugo Hagen, Josh Bruce, now a centre-half back, but they lack a real grabber where Josh Bruce, I think, is incredible at that. They seem to stagnate as well inside 50. They don't seem to spread for them to give them that exit ball. When they do, it feels like they do it all in clusters. It feels really disjointed. And Scott and West, they're very talented footballers, but it feels like they're lacking a real genuine crummer that can get around these tolls. And the space between the forward line and their smalls at times has been disturbing in the first two rounds. It feels like that Hugo Hagen and Darcy particularly are working against each other quite often. Last week, we saw them going. There isn't a clear structure in that plan. And for me, in summary, I feel like this has been coming. This isn't a new thing. Doggies have always been the Tottenham Hotspur, really, of this league. They're kind of there, making up the numbers. And when you look at the list and the names we've talked about here, we should be holding these in the esteem of Melbourne, Brisbane, Collingwood, Carlton, the teams that are up and coming. But really, this has been quite a disappointing time frame. When you look at Geelong, yeah, they finished top of the ladder. They've won a flag. Do you know what I mean? You look at the Doggies, they've always just kind of got by as opposed to winning. And I think a lot of pressure is coming of Beveridge. And I think looking at their fixtures ahead, it's the next tough 4 weeks. And if they're 0-6, could be a big concern because this is a very, very solid Doggies list. And I think between Sam Power and their entries and exits this year, the year just gone, you're starting to see the disillusion of this team, but also it's stagnated and it needs a fresh legs because they are way too good to be 0-2 and way too good for us to be having this conversation in round 2. But it goes back 10 and 15 years. I've been Pommy. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check out some of the other shows. We've got some incredible content here on Inner Sanctum. And until next time, Inner Sanctum out.